Now you know how data is transferred in the form of bits and bytes and how the data gets converted into binary form from your any native language. Universally, we have considered English here. Let us consider and try to know and identify important hardware which is used for data flow. You have studied about them before also, but we would just get to know them in a little bit more detail again. The components for data flow are major hardware components. The very first which we consider is chipset. You can see in the diagram, microprocessor, main memory, output devices, input devices, and storage devices are also combined together, which work with the chipset in order to make the data flow smooth. What is a chipset? Well, first of all, let's know about chip. A chip is nothing but basically a small circuit which can come in a small package, but it works very powerfully. It has circuitry with transistors combined together, silicon material for data transfer, and that comes together in order to work as a controller. The main function of the chipset is to control all the data flow between the hardware and the software. To know about the software, we would talk about it later on. Where the data is coming from, who needs it, and where it is to be sent finally is what a chipset takes it. It tries to get to know how the data is to be coordinated amongst all the devices. You can say a single device has thousands of hands in order to go ahead and execute the tasks. For example, Intel i820 chipset is one of the best working in the market. Coming to microprocessor, it acts as the executor. If chipset is the controller, the microprocessor is the one who ensures that things are done. It makes sure that all the commands that come are fulfilled. All the processes reach up to completion. And in case of failure, the errors are generated so that the user gets to know that it cannot be completed. For example, Intel i3, i5, and i7 are 6th generation processors. Mind you, these are very powerful. They can work day in and day out, handle large databases, very heavy video tasks, and do not blink an eye. The main memory, on the other hand, is the intermediate repository. By repository, we mean a place where we can store the data. This stores the data temporarily. That means it would not do so for a permanent basis. However, as long as the computer is in working position, it can store the data. Now what happens is basically that in case if any device, for example, a printer, etc., is asking for the services of the computer, the processor might be busy somewhere or it might try to look for the data. Main memory acts as an intermediate between the processor and the devices which require its services. So what happens? The processor first tries to look for any kind of instruction in the main memory and then tries to execute it. If it does not find any kind of data there, it will try to look into the hard disk. If the hard disk is also not available, then it will move on to compact disk, which is your CD or USB, etc. Main memory is like a right hand of your processor. For example, DDR3 4GB, 6GB, 8GB RAM is available. Also, DDR4 RAM is available. 4GB is the capacity of the RAM in order to store the data for a particular time, even milliseconds, seconds, etc. Storage. It acts as the permanent repository. This stores the data permanently as long as the user wants. And whatever is the final output, it can be saved. It can be looked upon again and can be found even after 10 years. For example, 500 gigabytes of hard disk drive, or 1 terabyte, or 2 terabytes by Western Digital are good amount of space is available in order to store the data permanently. Input. It is what the user gives to the computer. I can ask the computer to type a document for me. I use the keyboard, and whatever keys I press keeps on typing on the computer screen. The keyboard works as an input for me. And the user can input the data in many forms, as we already know. They can be numbers, words, images, video frames, etc. A mouse or a digital pen can also be used in order to input the data. For example, Logitech company makes very good wireless keyboards and mouse. Output. The result which we get from the computer is the output. After making all the calculations and getting the intermediate results, we get the final calculated values. This is the output. It can be received on a monitor or a screen or a printer. When I am typing the alphabets on the keyboard or I am clicking something on a mouse, that becomes an input. And when I'm typing and I see it typed on the screen, that becomes an output. So the process of typing is the input, and the process of seeing those words being typed on the screen becomes an output. I can save a document. I can record a voice. I can do many things and then listen to them or see them later on. Dell, HP, these companies make monitors, printers, etc. Let us also know that how all these devices basically communicate with each other. The major role is being played by buses. These are embedded connections which help data transfer between chipset, processor, and RAM. Do you see those lines in the picture? These are the buses. Just like in a house, we have rooms and we can walk from one room to another. So buses basically help for a faster data transfer. Mind you, these lines are not for decorations. They become a part of the circuit of the computer. Wires and cables. These are the external carriers. A wire is a medium through which only current is transferred, while a cable carries data signals. So does a bus. It also carries data signals, 0 and 1 forms. Now, how do these buses connect with each other? They do so through ports. Ports are the fixed connectors. These are like bus stops. When one bus links one fixed station to another, ports are there. Ports help connect wires and cables with hardware devices inside the computer cabinet as well as outside it. Moving on to the last section of this topic, let us know about the development of a software model for implementation of hardware and software entities into data flow. That's a big topic, and we have talked about software so many times. But what exactly is a software? Basically, a software is an interface which allows the user to use the hardware. For example, your operating system is a software. The keyboard is the hardware, and the operating system helps to connect you with the keyboard and type the systems and see them on the screen. Unless there is an operating system, which is a combination and a set of so many softwares combined together to perform different tasks. For example, you can start your computer, and then you see that moment you reach the main screen, that is because an operating system has been loaded into it. That main screen allows you to connect the mouse, input using keyboard, and it also allows you to go ahead and tell the computer what to do in your own language or universal language like English. Also, the hardware is there. Devices which we use in order to take an input, calculate and generate an output is the hardware. We have studied about it long time back also, and many times in the videos which have gone so far. Now let us look at this diagram and try to understand what happens between this model. You see a processor here, and this processor talks to keyboard, RAM, microcontroller, and so many more hardware devices. Also, this processor talks to the screen through an operating system. What happens is this processor is not directly talking to the operating system. Through the screen, the connection is built, and the operating system takes the commands from the user and reaches the processor, and then the output comes out. Can you develop your own hardware model in order to show the combinations between various components? I am hopeful you can do that by now. Thank you.